What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deeper. It is Anthony here with Pastor Bobby again. Well, Pastor Anthony as well.
Pastor Anthony.
And Pastor
Put some
Bobby.
respect on Anthony's name.
Funny, it always makes me uncomfortable when there's like occasional students that will do it. Like, I'm like, number one, why are you respectful in general? You're a teenager. But number two, I'm like, Pastor Anthony? Like, all right. I'm like, I don't like it. Don't call me that. But yeah, we're here with another episode. We got a lot of fun things that we're going to talk about. Another great message. Before we do that, how about those baptism recap videos?
Man, I am loving them.
There's nothing like those stories, huh? Every time, emotional.
So for those of you who maybe missed or didn't see, we're 2 weeks in now to our recap baptism video recaps of the 41 baptisms from the beginning of the month here, Pentecost Sunday. And yeah, yesterday's, there was a couple statements that were made. One that I think I referenced it in the service, but is when he said, I'm 3 weeks in. It's like the best 3 weeks of my life.
Yep.
I was like, I just love it.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, it's just everything about the video is so good.
Yeah.
Like if there was no music, it'd be just as emotional with each story. But like, just shout out to Dawson on this too. But just the way that the videos are made too, like the music fits the energy, which like I just love that we combine each story too. Like every story's cool, but this video hit extra hard, I think, for me. Like they always do, but this one had like, you know, a couple students in it, and it's always like, you feel it. And what I thought was cool is one of the students, Cora, in hers, she named the two leaders from her time in fifth grade that like really like pushed her closer to God. And I just thought that was cool that she's not just like, I had people that made an impact in my life, but she's like, no, like these two
Shad and Colleen, I think she said specifically.
Yep. And it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I loved the statement. Someone goes, I was just sitting in service a couple months ago, and it's like it hit me that, you know, even just these simple little things, God moving so specifically in people's lives, them being able to tangibly connect the dots that aren't hard to connect, but they're going, hey, God's showing up and I want to make this decision. And I think one of the guys, he's like, how can I not let the world know? So I love seeing them. And then we just finished part 2, and next week is part 3.
Dude,
that's crazy, man.
It's so awesome to celebrate so many baptisms, but I actually love that we're getting even more videos of it.
Yeah.
Like I'll watch baptism recaps every week.
We
can do throwbacks and start
just story of like transformation.
Imagine that, just a throwback video every week or something, just in the vault, and like you show up and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you see yourself on there. Sure. But it was a good week, man. And we're gonna get into the message still, but I just have a cool story I want to share that I thought it happened like early last week, maybe even, I don't know, 2 weeks ago kind of. But we have a student who was pretty heavily invested, or I should say he was attending regularly, maybe not heavily invested. And he was in middle school and went to middle school camp with us 2 years ago, and then started his freshman year last year and kind of disappeared attendance-wise. And I've kept up with him. Like we text whenever he pops in my head, or I'm the type of guy to use my reminders on my phone. So I have a reminder like every, 3 weeks or something to just text him too. So I've been keeping up with him. And sometimes it's like, yeah, great. Oh, just baseball.
Hey, can we pause right there for a second?
Yeah.
That's actually great leadership wisdom that you just shared, that we just could have brushed through really quickly.
The reminders?
You're the guy who goes, you said, I'm the guy who uses my reminders. And some people could hear that and go, well, that's a little cold. You have to be reminded to text somebody. But the reality is we all forget. We all forget to do things. And the fact that you set a discipline in your life to make sure someone they are seen and known and still feel loved, I think is a beautiful leadership nugget that we could just, if you're listening and maybe you're in leadership, maybe what does it look like for you to put intentional systems in place to make sure that you lead people and love people well? So I just thought that was great. Sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, and on that though, it was like, I think I was, second year in my college, but someone said, they were like, you guys always have this in your hand anyways. They're like, yeah, you should pray for people when they pop into your head. And they're like, but if someone pops in your head or someone tells a story and, you know, Joe from your sophomore year of high school pops in your head or whatever it is, he's like, why not reach out and just say, dude, you popped in my head. How's everything going? Mm-hmm. And he was like, you will be shocked at the amount of conversations that come from that. And he's like, you'll be shocked at the, opportunities to evangelize, as people say. And like, so I've just always done that. And especially with students, I use reminders, or if if I open a conversation and I'm like, I probably want to keep up with this regularly, then instead of just being like, oh, I'll text them whenever they pop in my head, I'll do that. Like, doesn't have to be a weekly thing. Like, like I said, it's every 3 weeks for me.
Yeah.
And then when I see the reminder, I just text them, how's it going? Check it off, and then it pops up 3 weeks later. So it's super easy. Like, I don't know. I also have hundreds of reminders when that happens, but I've
been wondering why you text me every 2 weeks. I don't know.
They're like, wow, he's very routine. Now everyone on here probably is going to understand. It's a good habit.
I have a friend who was sending out text encouragements to friends of his.
Yeah.
And they're very similarly worded. This was probably like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Very similarly worded. And it was like pastor friends of his. And so he sent out a text to one guy, and he sent out another text to another guy. He probably sent out 5 texts that morning, just encouraging his pastor buddies. Hey, it's going to be a great day in church. Lord's moving in your church, praying for you today. And he intentionally was doing all those things. He was praying, but he sends out these texts. And then one of his friends like screenshots it and throws it on social media. So grateful to have friends who love. And then one of his other friends texts and goes, and here I thought I was special.
Copy paste.
It wasn't quite copy paste, but it was close enough,
I mean, sometimes the heart is still there, though.
The heart of intentionality of being there,
Yeah, and the beauty of youth ministry, well, hopefully, and this isn't, and I think the best youth ministry, obviously, the best ministry is personal. So, like, it might be similar, but I know these kids, So, like, when I'm not just like, hey, how are you? It might be that one time, but then 3 weeks later, I know he plays baseball. How's baseball? I know he has an older brother who just graduated. How's your brother?
You're asking questions about their life so they can open up and have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
I do a video for everybody who attends for the first time. I met someone, I think it was either at Women's Night on Friday night, which shout out Women's Night.
Yeah,
it was a blast.
Oh, that was awesome.
Or it was Sunday, but they sort of stopped me and they were like, hey, you sent me a video. Yeah, it was at Women's Night. You sent me a video when we first started coming. And I was like, and she goes, and I'm sure you probably do that for everybody. And, and I'm like, yeah, of course. I send out a video to anybody who attends for the first time.
Yeah.
I'll send a video out to them just saying hi. And there's similar things I'll say on them. But if I had a chance to meet them, if there's a story about their children, if someone told me a story about how, I always also try to make it personal as well, because the idea of church is it is personal. And we are personal beings.
It has to be.
But yeah, I loved her response though, was like, hey, I was so thankful. I've never had someone even do that. And oftentimes we avoid like things that feel routine because we think to ourselves, well, this is routine, so it's like whatever.
Yeah.
She was like, hey, this is routine. I get that, because people aren't dumb. I get this as routine, but no one's ever done this before. And so because it was unique, it meant something. So like texting someone consistently, though it might be a routine, a system you've set in place in your mind to make sure you don't lose track of people, it means something because no one else is even creating that level of intentionality around those that are close.
Yeah. Well, and I think the further you go to, like, life is just navigating relationships and interactions with people. And like the older you get, more experience you have in relationships, hopefully the more like kind of wisdom you have in navigating those relationships. So like if someone pops in my head from high school, I'm not like, how's baseball? How's your brother? But I will say, like, early on, when I was texting people too, I would avoid being like, you popped in my head, or I thought of you, because I don't want them to be like, well, why are you thinking of me 8 years later, bro? Like, that's weird. I was like, I don't want them thinking anything weird. And then the same guy that was on stage saying that was like, no, tell them that you're thinking of them. And like, I remember the first text I sent, I said, dude, you popped in my head. I was thinking about you. My buddy responded and was like, oh, I didn't know you cared. And like, I didn't even say, I care about you. I just said, I thought of you. He's like, oh, I didn't know you cared. And I was like, how are you doing? And it led to this huge conversation.
Yeah.
And ever since I was like, okay, you're right, Pastor, and you're right, God, I should do this. But anyways, back to the original thing. This is so cool. This student, I text him every 3 weeks, blah, blah, blah. I text him, we keep up. This like last couple months, it's just been short responses from him. Good, right? Like not a ton of substance. It's okay. It happens. He's in the middle of baseball season too, because it was the end of the year. Summer hits, and like 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever, I get a message on Instagram from him, not text. And he said, Anthony, bro, like, it happened. It finally happened. I'm literally so emotional right now. I'm like on the verge of tears, but it finally happened. And he reminded me, which I didn't really forget, but he doesn't know because he hasn't been around. But 2 years ago at summer camp, we sat with our small group, and I said, hey guys, like at what point At what point do we say, I'm really going to give my life to Jesus and I'm not going to stand up to rededicate my life every year? Like, at what point do you stay sitting when that altar call is made? Because I had a group of boys that were like, you know, in church, like they're in church. And I'm like, this is my second year of summer camp with you guys, and you've stood up to rededicate your life both years. Yeah. So at what point do you take your relationship with God to the next level, actually? And we started talking about it, and this student was like, well, I feel so good always in my relationship with God, but I can't hear him. I don't hear God. I haven't heard God. I get insecure when I hear people talk about hearing God because I don't hear him. And I was like, well, are you, all the basic, maybe not basic, but all the things we say, right? Like, are you in your word? Are you praying? And I just
all
said,
the basics.
Have you asked God? Like, I was like, have you asked God to help you hear him and help you see him? And he was like, not really. I was like, I would start doing that. Every time you pray, I'd pray, and God, I know you're there. Just help me hear you. Help me see you. Help me
experience you. That could be a scary
you.
prayer for someone who doesn't feel like they hear God, because if you ask God to speak and you're not hearing, what if he doesn't speak? Then you only set yourself up for disappointment and failure.
Well, and this was one of those moments though. I was like preaching at him.
No, I love you. I love the statement you made. I think that's, you gave the right advice. I'm just acknowledging that.
No, but you're right.
If you're in that kid's shoes, it's got to be like,
that. And he said that. But then what I loved is he didn't just keep those insecurities or those fears internal. He just started saying it, and the rest of our group is like just as involved in the conversation. And he's like, but what do I don't even know what to look for. I don't even know what to listen for. Like, is God going to speak to me as a burning bush? Is it going to be an audible voice? Like, I don't know where to eat for dinner, or God help me. And he's not going to be like, anywhere but Arby's, right? Like, he's not going to do that. Like, so he was just like asking, like, I don't know what to even listen for. And I was like, dude, like, first of all, you're not the only person to go through this. Second of all, there's a lot of outside noises going on. So it's not that God's not speaking. It's that you probably aren't hearing him, or you're looking in the wrong places. And I was like, and that's okay. I was like, I spent the first 3 months of my relationship with God just begging him for me to be able to hear him. And I felt the same way as you. And I was like, I actually was like, it might sound weird to you, but I started to hear God through dreams first. Like, I would have dreams that would feel, it felt like I was in the presence of God, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, I got to pray. And I'd pray and I'd be like, that was God. Like, I just know it. I know that was the presence. Like, I know that was God. So I would have dreams, and it's kind of shifted over time, but I told him that, and I was like, just pray, man, just pray. 2 weeks ago, he messages me. It happened. It finally happened. I'm on the verge of tears. He said, I've been praying since camp. He did not go to camp last year. So it's been 2 years he's been praying. He's like, I've been praying, not every day, but every time I pray, God, let me hear you. And he was like, I had a dream last night, and I woke up sobbing and was like, that's God. He was like, my mom was literally asking me at breakfast, like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And he was like, I've never been better. I need to get back to church. I need to get back to youth group. And he's like, what do I do? So I just told him, I was like, dude, I'm in this new era. I'm like, tell your coach you're not going to be there Wednesdays. I'm no longer like, well, if you can make it. I'm like, dude, tell your coach you're out Wednesdays from 7 to 9. So
it's that simple.
But I just was like, dude, how awesome. Like, just not that I don't, take for granted what I do often or anything, but just moments like that, like this kid heard God for what he believes and is saying is the first time.
You know what's funny about that story too? Again, leadership conversation here is it would have been very easy for you to feel like after 2 years of space. So you had the little combos, then the ghostedness with no conversation. It could have been easy for you to feel like, well, that was wasted time, or that was not effective, or whatever. I missed it. I messed that one up. I didn't help lead them well. Like, you could have had 1,000 different conversations in your head about how you did not do what you could have done to help that kid get.
Yep.
But 2 years goes by.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the very thing that you encouraged him to do, he consistently was doing, not telling you about it, and then boom, it hits. And I don't know. I think that's sometimes the way like leadership goes. That's why I used to build furniture. Is because in ministry, it feels like you don't get to see the fruit of your labor often very quickly.
Yeah.
Or you only see minute steps typically. But like, I would build furniture, and it's like, oh, this was a piece of wood previously. Now it's a table, and it happened over 10 hours, where you're playing you're doing something different when you're working with people and leading and building people. And so I think that's beautiful. I think it's incredible that 2 years goes by and he was holding on to that thing you said. Could you imagine if you would have told him like 2 years prior, oh man, it'll happen. Just wait for it. Yeah. Just whatever. Like you would have dismissed it, or if you would have like not given pastoral wisdom and advice. I think when we lead people, I think it matters. It matters how we encourage them, how we challenge, how we equip them to do the things that God's calling them to do. And so well done. That's exciting.
But man. I just thought it was so cool. Like that's youth ministry. Like anytime someone's going to be like, what's youth ministry? I'm going to be like, this is youth ministry.
I think that's all ministry.
Yeah, it is.
I really do. It's different. It looks different.
That's true.
But it's very, like, I think because I don't know, we change sort of, but not really.
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality. I mean, we talk to people, every Sunday, people who are, forget what God said, or they're in their 40s and they're walking through similar stuff of can they hear God, or consistencies and things like that. So that is ministry, and that is
so true.
It's beautiful.
And I don't know, it's just great. But we obviously didn't plan that, but that's so cool. And I just think I was just so excited about it. I'm like, dude, tell your coach you're not there Wednesdays. Show up.
That's what Simon does. My oldest, 15, he told his coach he's not available to practice after 6:45 on Wednesdays. If practice starts at 5:30, he'll show up and leave at 6:45. If practice starts at 6, he doesn't show up because there's not enough time to get half a practice in, really.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And so now shifting kind of to the message. It was a great message, and I'll just say this too, full transparency, and maybe this is even good for some of you to hear. Yes, I'm a pastor, but my early like church experience, the church I was at when I first got saved, I'm not even kidding when I say outside of like classes and courses, like I had never really ever heard a message preached from the Old Testament or about the Old Testament. So when I first got saved, it was like I knew what the Old Testament was because of the courses I was in. I took some classes where they would like reference it, but it was all just basically, the Gospels on over and over and over. Actually, the majority of it was just Acts, but it was everything. But like it was all of this, and it was like it was an incredible experience. But then like since then, I've really like my last church sprinkled it in more, and then I came here, and like before you were here, when Brandon, like during the Brandon era, there was times where I'm like, this dude never even preaches the New Testament. Like this is just all Old Testament. And so there's so many things that I feel like I'm learning as we go. And so this series, like we're 2 weeks in? This was week 2. And I'm like already like I never connected those dots, or I never thought of that, or there's been a couple things where I'm like, I don't even think I really even knew that. And I just thought it was so cool. But taking it, because at times I feel like the Old Testament, we think either just it's a different God, it's a scary God, he's a hateful God, right? He's an angry God, or we think it's so old school that it's irrelevant to us. Like it doesn't actually mean anything to us. It's just a recap. It's just history. Yeah. But you did such a good job, especially in these first 2 weeks, I think, explaining the story and tying it into why does this actually matter for all of us? What does this actually mean for all of us?
Yeah.
And yesterday, your first point, which I have written down here too, you guys know I'm a note taker. It's the path of obedience isn't always easy. That was like the first point that you threw on there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, we could kind of break down parts of the story as we go here, but just the opening question I kind of want to have you answer maybe is, why do you think that so many Christians, so I would say even maybe the majority, give their life to God and start their walk and their journey with God and their life with God and think that it is just going to be peaches and cream, smooth sailing, easy,
no problems,
no pain,
ever.
No famine, no drought, no storms, just a cakewalk,
I think it could be possible that the God we want to serve is the God of easy. And so when we think, like what is a good life, we equate good with easy in our minds. Stress-free, no difficulties, don't have to overcome anything. But that kind of life, I don't know, the reality is that kind of life isn't even that good in reality. Because what it produces sometimes isn't that great. And so I think people approach God at times in a way where they want just every problem to be solved and everything to be easy. And I've said this, I don't know, my entire ministry life. I didn't come up with it. Someone else came up with it, I'm sure, but I couldn't tell you who. used it for so long. That life following Jesus doesn't mean you won't go through hardships. It just means you won't go through them alone. Like it's God with you. I mean, that's
He doesn't promise that you're not going to go through anything. He promises to be with you in the middle of everything.
Jesus' term, Emmanuel, God with us.
Yep.
Yeah, and so we know life is going to be hard. We know life's going to be difficult. We know there's things going to be thrown at us. And when you follow Jesus, the point is he's with and he guides and he helps lead and he helps direct your steps and he helps protect us from certain things. But it doesn't mean that we don't go through hard or difficult seasons. I think important thing to note is how do we respond in hard and difficult seasons?
Yeah, that's great.
Because even in the text, it doesn't say God was okay with him going. We talked about this a little bit last week. Mariah did, and I on the podcast. His situation was different than Ruth's. He went to Egypt. And I don't know if going to Egypt was a sin in this situation or not. But I do know that the way he responded in Egypt was a sin.
Yeah.
I mean, God was not happy with it. And he had to come back. But it's possible he wasn't supposed to go. It's possible he was supposed to go. Different circumstance in Ruth. We can't apply the same logic there or the same understanding of Scripture because Ruth left during a time. Well, not Ruth. Naomi and Elimelech left during a time that Israel was a sovereign nation. And this was a time when Abram was with Lot and his wife, and they had a plot of land in Canaan. But he left because it got hard. And how we respond in difficult seasons is actually really important. I think it might be one of the most important things that we can understand as followers of Christ is that our response during difficult seasons matters. Yeah. And if we rely on our own strength, if we rely just on our own strategy or our own
try to do it ourselves,
cunning and scheming and plans, it'll lead to disaster.
Build our name,
Exactly. And so Abram actually was relying on all of his own scheming and plans.
Yeah.
And it led to disaster.
Yep.
And then he got vanquished. I don't even think I worked this out until I was preaching it. This part here is he got nervous about the fact that Sarai was beautiful, his wife, and he was like, "Oh, they're going to kill me so they can
say you're my
have
sister."
You."
Yeah.
Well, they had her. They took her. Yeah. Pharaoh took her into his house, married her, and then he found out.
Yeah.
To me, it's more dangerous
to lie.
To lie and get found out. Like the chance of death seems higher on that end.
Yeah.
You're going to do this to me, I will smite you. So it would have been, but he used his own cunning and his own scheming to try to prop himself up to secure his own self.
Yeah.
And everything about his move was to secure his own self.
Yeah.
God secured him in a famine in Canaan? Yeah.
100%.
We know this because God later takes care of people in famines.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. And so, but he didn't trust God to do it there. So he went to Egypt. And it's funny because in my mind, when I picture Egypt, what do you picture? Like desert and pyramids?
Desert, pyramids.
Yeah. But later it describes Egypt as lush and beautiful. Like in what we read in Genesis 13, Egypt, lush and beautiful. Sodom and lush and beautiful.
What's funny about what you're saying too, and this is not Bible nerd thing, but recently I have been getting ads for the brand new 18-hole golf course directly by the pyramids. So just now when you said, what do you picture Egypt? I literally just get this aerial drone footage of right by the pyramids. They just built a brand new golf course. I was like, that's not Egypt. Wait a minute. That's where my brain went immediately. But yeah, you picture desert, empty, terrible place to be, but no, described as beautiful.
It was described as beautiful and lush, and obviously it looked different in that time frame. But yeah, so what he did, he put his own security in his own hands and he ran with it. How many times have you been guilty of trying to secure your own life outside of prayer with God, trusting God in the process?
Yep.
And when you do that, honestly, I think oftentimes it leads to disaster.
I think for me, every time it has.
Yeah.
And disaster can be defined maybe in different ways, but I think just I've learned every time I've tried to do something on my own, every time I've even tried to plan on my own, not just careless living, you know what I mean? But planning because I'll plan specific details, and every time I've done that, it's just not only has it fallen apart, I've planned it to go like this, and God's completely gone like this, the complete opposite direction of what I thought, just everything. Yeah,
and that's what I was talking about yesterday. I don't know, it might have been towards the end or the middle, but it's We want our life with God to be like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfectly curated Instagram page, I think is what I said.
Yeah.
We want it to look all perfect and easy. But usually when we start making your own plans, man makes his own plans, God laughs. Like we think we figured out all the contingency plans, but none of us are Doctor Strange. Shout out Marvel reference right there.
Yeah.
There it is. But we can't figure out all the contingencies that could possibly happen, and we can't plan for all the contingencies. And so sometimes we avoid hard. We want to avoid hard. And look, there are some things I would love to be easier, and sometimes God makes things easier.
Yeah.
I also don't have the opposite theology where if it's easy, it means it can't be God.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes God makes it easy.
Yeah, like that's like it's the line of you should expect difficulty. You should expect storms. You should expect famine. You should expect drought. Like there's still going to be difficulties you face, but there's something powerful when you can expect it. You're not taken off guard because I think so many people get on this like spiritual high when they give their life to God, and then they think everything is going to be perfect and there's never going to be an issue. And the second there's an issue, they go, "Well, God, why me? Well, God, why aren't you in this? Well, God, why do you allow this? Well, God, why are you putting me through this? Well, God," you know what I mean? And they start to be like, "I don't think I got the God that was advertised." And you're like,
that's why I try not to advertise God as the one.
I was gonna say, and I think that falls on a lot of preachers and teachers too, and just in general, when we're leading people to Christ, to Jesus, to this life with God, like more often than not, that's the story you're telling, because they're already in more often rock bottom or just a low place, and so you don't want to go up and be like, "Hey, you still want your life to suck, but be a lot better with someone there." Like, yeah, it's true. It is a lot better when God's there, but the language we use, in those moments is like more uplifting and positive, and God's the one who got me out of this.
I think that it's important to explain that God does pull us out of the pit that we're in.
Yeah.
But I think oftentimes too, Christianity, we get pulled out of the pit, but it's easy for a Christian to be like, "All right, cool, that's it. That's in the story."
Yeah.
And no more walking,
yeah.
No more movement, no more forward momentum in their life, no more journeying with God. I love the imagery. So when we ask people to follow Jesus here, like, "Hey, do you want to follow Jesus?" It is, do you want to become a follower of Jesus?
Of Jesus, yeah.
Following being the key word here. You're not just like going, "All right, cool, God, I think you're great. I believe in you." You're going, "I'm going to choose to follow you," which implies that there is movement in our life. So it's not just getting pulled up out of a pit, but it's a journey.
A process,
Yeah,
journey.
And if you've ever been on journeys, high mountaintops, low valleys, those sometimes there's things that we have to walk through and navigate that are difficult.
Yeah.
And even in the difficult seasons, we can find goodness. What's the New Testament scripture? God works together for the good.
Oh, yeah, for the good of all.
Yeah. Those who love him are called according to his purpose. God works all things together for the good, which means in difficult seasons, good still comes out of it. It just doesn't mean that there's no difficult seasons.
Well, and what I think is cool is the fruit that the Spirit produces. It's not circumstantial. You know what I mean? So you might be going through it, but the good thing is the Holy Spirit isn't. Yeah. You might be going through it, but God isn't. If take the situation you're in, how different would that situation be if now all of a sudden you had peace, you had comfort, you had kindness, all these different things. Like, you're able to approach and navigate those difficult seasons and difficult moments of your life so much differently than before, because you have the presence of God now.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's just so good.
And that's why it makes life good. It doesn't, good and easy are not equivalents.
Yeah.
It makes life good. But sometimes the path of obedience isn't always easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is hard.
We start to think comfort
sometimes we come up against decisions where we fork in the road sort of moments where we go, am I going to choose to obey God when this feels like or am I going to choose to do what I want to do? It's the war between the spirit and the flesh.
Yeah.
Abram makes a mistake, and then he has to leave Egypt to go back to Canaan. He could have went back anywhere, but he goes back to Canaan.
Yep.
And when he goes back, the first thing he does is he goes back to the place
altar.
where he built the altar.
Yep.
He probably had to repair the altar, maybe build the altar again. He had to do something there.
Yeah.
And then he worshiped the Lord in that same place again. So the point isn't like it's a continuation of the story.
Yeah.
It's not shifting gears even. It is going, hey, I went from making a mistake, going to a place, God still protected, even when I was making mistakes, God still protected, gave me a way out. I'm come back to where he called me to be in the first place, and I choose to worship him. Worship him here again.
Yeah.
And so, and I think the whole idea of that is passionate worship. And I referenced this in the message yesterday as well. It is, we worship God in multiple ways. One way is the way we live our life, the way we treat others,
how we live. Yeah,
how we live. That is a form, an act of worship to God because we're surrendered to him in obedience.
Yeah.
Another way that we worship God is in moments. So Abram was worshiping God by listening and responding and going back to where God had called him to go in the first place. Obedience, the way he was living his life. That's where he was moving. And then we see him worship God. The way he treats Lot was an overflow of the way he understood God.
Yeah.
Again, the way I live my life is the way I worship God. So we worship God in that way, as well as we worship God in moments. And I hope that every believer can think back to moments where they've encountered God in a really powerful way. And I don't think they have to be limited to a handful of moments in our life. I think that they can be consistent moments in our life. But I go back to our Good Friday service. I feel like someone, I know a couple people told me they felt like they just encountered Jesus in a really powerful way that night. And so we worship God in moments through song, through prayer, through worship, through adoration, from our heart flowing out.
Yeah.
And I think that area of worship, the moments of worship, the more we walk with Jesus, the easier it is to been there, done that.
Not easier.
Easier. Yeah, the easier it is to forget about it.
Yeah.
To act like it's not important anymore.
Yep.
To allow, I'm a worshiper. Of course I'm a worshiper. And it's like saying, oh yeah, I love my spouse, but the last time you said I love her was, I don't know, 6 months ago. Yeah, it's like we allow the last time we did something that showed our love was a year ago. The last time we worshiped God in a moment was forever ago.
Yeah.
Now we just go and we sing songs. We don't worship. And there is a distinct difference.
We think it's transactional. Like I worship. Now, God, what are you going to do me? Or what are you going to do for me?
Or I'm checking the box that I'm supposed to check here.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually having a moment with you. I'm just doing the routine to prove my worthiness.
Like how different would worship, corporate worship, or we're singing even, how different would that be if people viewed it as I'm having a moment with God?
If you knew
that way.
If you knew that this Sunday, today we're recording this on Monday morning, I'm sure Dawson will have it posted by tomorrow, Tuesday. So if you knew in 5-6 days from now, or however long it is from the time you're listening to this to Sunday, if you knew God was going to meet you on Sunday morning in worship while you were worshiping him, or if you knew that if you woke up on Saturday and you spent time in worship, I believe corporate worship is important. I believe personal, individual worship is important. But if you knew God was going to meet you, God said, I'm going to meet you. How much different would you approach the moment if you knew you were going to encounter God that way? I believe you would walk into it differently. I believe you would show up early. I believe you wouldn't walk in sipping on your coffee for 20 minutes. I believe that you would come in with some level of expectation.
So
if you are about to go on a date with, maybe you're dating somebody, maybe, Anthony's dating Megan, Bear. I'm married to Megan Harrell.
Different Megans.
Different Megans. But if Anthony's going out on a date with Megan, if you're going out, you're not just like, if you're going on a date, you're not just showing up and just left the gym and I don't know, whatever you want to do. No, you've planned it because you want this moment to,
it's intentional,
to mean something. And so if you're going to meet with God and God's going to meet with you, how would you approach it? I believe that yes, Holy Spirit dwells in you. God's with us all the time.
Yeah.
Let's not grow so familiar with that we treat that as just ordinary or common or unimportant. And so when we worship in moments, I think it is very, very important. I don't think we should walk into moments where we expect to encounter God and act like it's just another day.
And the other side of that I've heard is people say, well, I don't think worship should be emotional. If your emotion and your feelings is the only thing that drives your worship, that's that's something, we can talk about.
Yeah.
But if you don't worship with passion, if you've never worshiped passionately with emotion involved, I'm like, I pray you do.
Yeah,
There's nothing like having a moment like that.
Everyone exerts passion differently. So there's people who are you're generally reserved. You're not very expressive. You're passionate, but you're not. The way you express your passion is different.
Yeah,
it's not fitting a mold of someone else's expression of passion, but
that's what I mean.
It is you being
expressive in your way.
Your way.
Yeah.
There are prescriptives. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There's prescriptives in the Bible of ways to worship God, lifting up holy hands, saying amen, shouting hallelujah, singing.
Yeah.
Like there are ways, bowing down on your knees. Like there are ways the Bible prescribes to us we are to worship the Lord.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we choose not to do those things because that's just not my personality. Well, I don't want to be like too aggressive here because it's a podcast though.
But
does that matter?
You.
That it's your personality?
It's also not about you. You're like, that's
not what worship's about.
You're like,
if God says do this, if God shows us biblical examples of what it looks like to worship, then we should consider that when we worship the Lord. But we should be passionate about it. I think I've said this on the podcast before. Yes, I don't want my worship just to be emotionally driven, because that means when my emotions are high, my worship's high. My emotions are low, my worship is low. Whatever.
Yep.
However, I don't want my worship to be void of emotion, because lacking emotion in life, we call that sociopathic.
And
that's not a positive thing. That's actually we look at it as a negative thing if you're a sociopath. And so I don't think God expects us to be void of emotion, because we have emotion as human beings. I think yes, I agree with you. When we worship the Lord with passion, with intentionality.
Yeah.
Yes, worship the Lord in your head, sure, but worship the Lord in your heart, spirit and truth.
What's so cool too is kind of like ties all this together too. I think is there's a massive pastor, theologian. I know you and I have talked about him. Nathan Finocchio.
Yeah.
He's very popular now, but I saw something the other day that I think or maybe it was actually his brother. I'm giving the credit in the wrong space. His brother, Gabriel Finocchio, said something on Instagram. I watched this little clip, and he said, we love to say, well, God saved me. God saved me. God saved me. And yes, that's true. And he said, but I think the more accurate statement is God wrecked me. Like when the more that I gave my life to God and actually fully submitted myself to him and was being obedient to him, the more he actually wrecked me emotionally, the more he actually wrecked my life, because before God, my life was about me.
Yeah, it was
after
my
God.
life.
Yeah, after God. Yeah, I've died to myself. Here, you take this. I'm a vessel. You do what you want with me. And I was just like, man, that sums it up perfect, at least for me. And so when talking about not being void of emotion, the emotion that stirs up in me when I worship is not, oh, my life is like, and this isn't a knock if you feel this way, but I'm not like, oh, my life is hard. Why me? Why this? It's like, man, thank you, Jesus, that I'm not who I was.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus, that I'm what I remember praying for this.
Sometimes I feel the overwhelming sense of the presence of God and I cry. Sometimes I feel the overwhelming sense of the presence of God and I get more excited than I even know how to contain it.
Not even cry. I'll weep at times. Like it's, and I'm not like that in general. Like I hear this is the type, I'll watch Undercover Boss, I won't cry. That's the type of guy I am. Like
that's how hard I am.
Yeah. LSU wins a national championship, I cry. But no, like literally though. And so I get in church and it's like, I think about that, I think about the prayers that he has answered. I think about the fact that I am just I live in life that I do not deserve to live. If you look at the things I've done, the way I've treated people, the decisions I've made, both pre and post Jesus. Yeah. And like, I think about that and I'm like, but God has given me
so much
multiple chances.
So much mercy.
Over just filled my life with grace and mercy. And like my obedience has always led to growth. It's always led to more faith in him, right? Mm-hmm. It's produced perseverance. Yeah. Like all the things you're like, oh, it's like almost like the Bible's right. You're like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of true. But you said something, this is a perfect way to end, but you said, I have it written here. You said the longer we walk with God, the easier it becomes for us to neglect our time of worship. And it's so true. And the way I say it to students when I talk about worship and prayer, I say worship and prayer at the very minimum, if you're going to reduce them to a sentence, remember it this way. When I worship, when I pray, it takes my eyes off me and puts my eyes back on God. It takes my eyes off my situation and puts it back on God. It takes my eyes off my fears, puts it back on God. It takes my eye off my insecurity, my anxiety, the list goes on and on and on.
Yep.
Because when I'm neglecting worship, when I'm not spending time with God and all these things, the more I look at my problem, the bigger it feels.
Yeah.
The more I start to feel like, how am I going to take that on? How am I? No. How are we?
Yeah.
How is he?
Yeah.
And not only that, how has he already defeated this?
Yes.
What's in the middle of this for me to learn and take from it?
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's just, I cannot stress enough how important it is that we do not walk away from worship.
Yeah.
So great.
Don't walk away from encounter. Don't walk away from presence.
Yeah.
You know, our vision statement as a church to encounter Jesus and experience life
to the fullest.
Encounter Jesus. And that's not just a one-time decision. I've encountered him for the first time. It's to encounter Jesus like every Sunday, every day of the week. Like hopefully you listen to you read the Bible this morning or spend some time in prayer or put on some worship music, or hopefully you serve somebody that you've encountered Christ in a powerful, real, and tangible way. That should be our daily pursuit, is to encounter him and to have him guide us and lead us and instruct us and correct us and direct us and all the things. And so, don't let that fade just because you've gotten older and more secure in your ways, that you've turned it into a science. It's like the TV show The Office, when Gabe says, I'm an expert at Valentine's Day. I've pretty much turned love into a science. And it's like, no, bro, you missed the whole
you're
thing.
already off.
You missed it. And don't do that in your relationship with God.
Well, and it's that order. That's the recipe. It's in that order for a reason. And encounter Jesus, experience life to the fullest. If you want to experience life to the fullest, that comes through encountering Jesus. Yeah. And we have plenty of opportunities to do that at church, where we do it together, but let's take a step forward in our life. Let's take some ownership, some input, some disciplines, and let's make sure that we're not limiting our time to encounter Jesus to Sundays at church.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love this series. I feel like it's been good, and I already know, or I'm guessing, some of the places it's headed, just having read through some of these stories, and I'm just excited to see the new twists that maybe you put on some of them, or even just learning more as we go. So that's another podcast in the books. Hopefully we see you guys this Sunday, and get there early, meet people, and get ready for Baptism Video Part 3. Thanks for listening to another episode of Digging Deeper.